What did the Buffaloes get this time with the Bison. But she just called to cancel. She said I won't be able to make it. Here's a or I die on to be cremated. It's my last chance to have a smoke in my body. This is bad joke advice. If you're feeling depressed, try drinking a gallon of water before you go to sleep. It'll give you a reason to get out of bed in the morning. I always look for my next Good morning. They are young. Okay, video radio. Yes. All right. Sit down.
Good morning. It's great to see you all here. We had a lot of nice visiting time this morning because we're at table, so that's kind of neat. If you feel like you have your back turned, please don't hesitate to go ahead and turn around. That's okay. Are there any guests that you would like to introduce?
I have two.
I see. Okay.
Go ahead.
Would you like to introduce yourself, or would you like me to introduce you? This is Kevin and Gabrielle, our nephew and niece, and they were coming here for a while and have moved to Montrose because they're coming back today to hear Uncle. So we're happy that you're with us today. There are two very special guests in the back of the room. Karen and Lorene Stone are here with us today.
Thank you so much. And I do want to thank all of you for all of the wonderful things you've done for me while I've been ill. It's just amazing. Beautiful cards, beautiful flowers, lots of phone calls. It's just been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Did everybody hear that?
Yes.
You guys hear that? Yeah. Well, we are thrilled that you're here with us today, and Lorraine actually is turning 101 next week.
All right. I lost my hearing.
She's lost her hearing, and she said she can't see very well, and her legs don't work, but by golly, she's turning 101. So, for that joy, we say, praise be to God. So it's good to have you, Karen and Lorraine.
Thank you.
Thanks for making the effort.
So much.
Yes. Are there other guests? I think everybody else is family. How about announcements? Do we have any announcements? No. Do you like this thing?
In the back corner, the Lord's table is set up with some fresh basil. So first come, first serve back there. Up front are the 2 buckets for Fairmile School. If you would like to read more about the amazing things that Furnace Sushi does with children who come to her, on the bulletin board hanging down, there's wonderful stories about each child, the improvement they've made at Fairmile School. If you are making a check, make it to Delta United Methodist Church with Fairmile in the memo line.
And so the way the Lord's table works is that if you have some produce, something you'd like to share, you have too much of, you can come and bring it on the table, and other people can shop back there, and you can just drop a little donation for what you feel the worth is in the little basket that's sitting back there. So there's basil ready today. Any other announcements? Okay. What about joys? Who has a joy or a concern? Linda has a joy.
We just want to say thank you to everybody else for donations so that we could go to family camp, which we did 2 weeks ago, and it was great. And then Owen did junior high camp, or middle high camp, and Willa is there now. So we just wanted to thank you guys for allowing us to go there because it was wonderful and it was great. And we went up there just before the bugs got really bad, so it was great.
So our church donated enough money to send 1 family and 6 kids, is that what it was? Yep. To camp this year, so that's fantastic. For that joy, let's say, praise be to God. And praise be to God that we know that He is touching our children's lives. That's very, very special. Any other joys or concerns? Yes, Tom.
I have a joy that I've been reappointed to Delta United Methodist Church.
And for that joy, we say, praise be to God. And we are also pleased, Tom, that you'll be with us.
Huge number of churches, when they read the appointments, that were followed by to be supplied. Huge numbers.
Tom said numbers, in case you didn't hear that, numbers and numbers and numbers of churches will not have a pastor or are still in the phase of looking for a pastor to go to that church. So we are grateful and blessed that we have a pastor and his family here with us. So let's again say, praise be to God. Also, I'd like to announce that Cedar Ridge has lost its pastor. He has retired and will be moving on to wherever he's going. I think he's moving away. Chicago, okay. And in his place will be Karen Hurst. Karen Hurst was a pastor here, an interim pastor between two pastors a few years ago. She's a lovely lady, and so I'm very excited for Cedar Ridge. I think that would be a really nice move for them and for her too. So for that, let's say, praise be to God. Yes.
I just want to say that last night I went to, what's that little mermaid lady? Frozen, there we go. And I'm sorry, that's my way my brain works, I have to draw it out. But anyway, it was wonderful, and Emma, of course, was super good. And Addie, she did such a great job for a young girl to be great like her. She's great. They were great.
So Darlene is talking about the Magic Circle Theater. I know many of you went. It's in Montrose, and they had a production of Frozen Junior, which meant that it was the whole entire cast was kids, 18 and under. And it was fantastic. It was so much fun, and they did such a great job. Emma Wise was the leading part, and she sang her little heart out. My grandpa would have said she did herself proud, and she really did. She did a great job, and Ada Nutzak also was in it, but she's him, and she did a great job singing and dancing and just as cute as she could be. So for the talented youth we have in our church, let's say, praise be to God. Okay?
Many of you know Wade's passion, my son Wade's passion for biking. And last week he successfully completed a 600-mile road bike race along the coast of California. And in honor of that, I will share the one dad joke you missed in the bulletin, which is, does anyone know why his bike can't stand up by itself? It's too tired.
Too tired. After 600-mile road trip. That's a good one. Nicely done. So for Wade, and wow, a 600-mile trip, and hopefully his legs will hang out, we will say, praise be to God.
He got home and went to work the next day.
Oh my gosh, she's young and healthy and strong.
He's young. He's
Yeah. Carol, did you have one?
For Juneteenth that we are celebrating today, may we understand more of what has truly happened in our history, but also work to make this church and our community much more inclusive.
Thank you for helping us remember that, Carol. And for the concern of us continuing to work in the future, we say, hear our prayers, O Lord, but for the joy of the people who have made it through and have come out successfully, we say, praise be to God. On your basket, we are not going to do an offering on your basket. On your table, we're not going to do an offering today. There is a basket there, and you can just put your offering in that basket, and we'll collect it after worship. Anything else? Don't forget to stay and hang around for the ice cream social that will be served right after this service. The kids will be serving ice cream sundaes. Anything else? Any joys or concerns? Okay.
I think we should just have this printed in our bulletin as a repeat concern. We are in the midst of a serious war in Ukraine, and people are dying, and culture is being obliterated, and I'm very concerned, and I know you all are, and I don't want us to forget this or become blasé about the fact that this is a gruesome offense to the culture of Ukraine.
So for us to remember that, we say, hear our prayers, O Lord.
Marcia, our nursery attendant lady, her husband had surgery. It went well. They don't know the results yet. So if you could just keep her and her husband in your prayers.
Bruce.
Yes. Bruce.
His name is Bruce.
Bruce. So prayers for Bruce. He had open surgery and stomach. He was in the hospital one day and he went home, and she's a little concerned and overwhelmed about his stomach and how kind of hard it is, and she's trying to caregive. And so for her, as well as for a good result and outcome of the test, we say prayers, O Lord. And the last one is, it's Father's Day. So for all of you fathers in the crowd, thank you for your time and effort in raising children and keeping families together. And so for that joy we say, praise be to God.
And for their continued strength and care.
And for their continued strength and care, we say, praise be. Oh, I'm sorry. Hear our prayers, O Lord. Praise be to God. Okay. Yes, I think we're ready for you guys.
If you would like to stand and join us, you are welcome to do that.
As the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs after you. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. As the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs after you. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. You're my friend anymore, my brother, even though you are a king. I love you more than any other, so much more than anything. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you.
You may sit down for this one if you would like.
I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whispers of love.
you join me in prayer? Gracious Heavenly Father, Father of all, we come with you this morning to hear your word, to share your love, to feel a sense of peace, knowing that you are our Father, that you care for us, who you are, it's who we are. Be with us this day, and be with us this week, and be with us the rest of our days, that we might dwell with you, that we might have peace with you, that we might have communion with you. Be with us this morning, that we might learn a little bit more about how to be a kingdom person, as you would have us be. In the name of the Christ. Amen.
Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you.
Proverbs 6 through 20 has this advice for our scripture today. Please join me. Good fellow, follow your father's good advice. Don't wander off from your mother's teachings. Wrap yourself in them from head to foot. Wear them like a scarf around your neck. Wherever you walk, they'll guide you. Wherever you rest and whenever you rest, they will guard you. When you wake up, they'll tell you what's next. For sound advice is like a beacon. Good teaching is a light. Moral discipline is a life path. The words of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Good morning. Welcome to an odd worship service this morning. About 2 months ago, Tom said, I'm going to be off to Montana, God willing, for church, for annual conference with Sam. And I'm probably not going to get back till late Saturday, if at all. So would you do Father's Day service for me? And I said, sure. And then I started thinking for a couple months about what the Father's Day service should consist of. And then I got inspired by a young lady named Emma Wise. Some of you were here for Mother's Day sermon. And on her Mother's Day sermon, she talked about the advice that she had gotten from her mother over the course of her lifetime. I thought it was a wonderful service and a wonderful sermon by Emma. So you're going to get the same thing. This is not necessarily advice from my father. If you knew my father, you would know he didn't give that much advice. He didn't talk very much. But this is just general advice that fathers might have given to their sons over the course of their lives. It's not very preachy. My sermon's not very preachy. It's not very religious. It's not your father's sermon, let's say it that way. And, well, I'll get there in a minute. Most of us remember something that our father once said to us, some piece of advice, one kernel of wisdom, one pithy saying, one timeless truth. Today I'm going to share some of those pieces of advice that you might have heard, and some of the timeless truths in the form of humor known as dad jokes. Also not something you hear every Sunday morning. First, what is a dad? Why do we celebrate them on Father's Day? Well, one definition of the word dad, which I got from a reliable source on a coffee cup, is a dad is someone who is always there to give you advice, whether you like it or not. And how do you know, because I'm going to tell a whole bunch of dad jokes, and you have a whole bunch of them in your bulletin. That's also a unique bulletin. You can take it home and put it by your toilet or on the refrigerator, wherever you do your reading. But how do we know if a joke is a dad joke? Well, dad jokes are a special species of humor. If it involves a reaction, if it evokes a reaction somewhere between cringing, groaning, or earnest laughter, and you simultaneously want to tell the person telling the joke to shut up, and also to tell you more, then you're probably in the presence of a dad joke. They tend to roll out of your mouth like a runaway roll of toilet paper. And they're about that work useful too. The phrase fatherly advice, most of us have had fatherly advice, typically refers to advice that's wise, comes from experience, and is intended to help you be the best you can be. That's my definition of fatherly advice. Think about all the lessons we learn from the Bible, from the sayings, teachings, and actions of Jesus. Aren't they always wise, from God's experience, and intend us to make the best person we can be? That's a definition of Jesus' fatherly advice. Jesus called his advice the kingdom of heaven, over and over and over. This is how you reach the kingdom of heaven. Being the best, most godly person each of us can be. That's what I call being a kingdom person, being in the kingdom of heaven. One source of fatherly advice from Jesus is the Sermon on the Mount, which we studied in Sunday school, ad nauseum, right? Those of us have studied it for about 6-8 weeks now. It comes from Matthew 5, 6, and 7. In those 3 short chapters, Jesus tells us how to love, how to live, and how to be a kingdom person. A kingdom person, one who loves Jesus and who is the person Jesus wants us to be, and then receives the benefits or beatitudes of such a life. The word beatitude is just the Greek word for blessed, and Jesus tells us how to be blessed in those beatitudes. And don't we all want to be blessed? Don't we all want to be beatified? Blessed are you when you follow Jesus' advice, and hopefully blessed are you when you follow Dad's advice. Another good source of advice from the Bible is the book of Proverbs, which Gayla just read part of. Verse 629 says, advice is good, take heed. The book of Proverbs was compiled by Solomon about 3,000 years ago, and it has many sayings and pieces of advice. So I'm going to combine 3 elements into my sermon today. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit of fatherly advice, and then I'm going to read a couple of verses from the book of Proverbs that relate to that particular area of fatherly advice. And then I'm going to tell a couple of dad jokes just to finish up that section. Okay? Probably unlike any sermon you've ever heard in your life. So I have some examples of things you might have learned from your dad if you were paying attention. And I have them in 4 categories: work, general life advice, money, and romance. That pretty much covers our lives, doesn't it? Work, general life advice, money, romance, that's a whole shooting match. The first category is work ethic. Most dads want us to be good workers, to have good ethics, and to be able to make a living. To that end, there is a special piece of advice about how to get the job done. The first advice you might have heard is, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Ever heard that? It's worth doing right. When you start a project, carry it out to completion the best way you can. A half-done or shoddy job is just not acceptable. Another work-related advice is a place for everything and everything in its place. Probably heard that. Place for everything, everything in its place. Why are you poking him over here? I don't know. They must have something going on. Your tools, whether they are hammers, vehicles, or computers, all different kinds of tools, deserve good care. Keep your tools cleaned and in the right place, and put them away when you're done. You will not waste time the next time looking for where they are. How many dads have been infuriated when they find a rusty tool lying out in the rain? Yep, been there. Practice makes perfect. For that, right? Practice makes perfect, not just from dads, from your coach or from whomever. You can't expect to be an expert in some job the first time you try it. You have to keep at it with good practices until you become an expert. One good way to become an expert is to surround yourself with good people and then get out of their way. Another good piece of dad advice, right? Surround yourself with good people, get out of their way, then watch and imitate what they do until you're able to do it. Third piece of advice about work. Never ask someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. If, and all leaders should take this advice, right? If it is too dangerous or too dirty or too nasty for you to do, and it is too risky and wrong to ask someone else to do it. Teenagers accepted. Okay. And our first lesson about work is from Proverbs 24, about the value of good work. All of these proverbs come from the Message Bible, which is a Eugene Peterson translation that's very colloquial, very common language, and sometimes very colorful. This is from Proverbs 24. And Jesus, when he lived in the first century, would have known about Proverbs 24, might have even memorized it as part of his growing up to be a good young Jew in the first century. This would have been in Aramaic instead of English, but this is Eugene Peterson's version. Proverbs 24, verses 30 to 34. One day I walked by the field of an old lazybones, and then past the vineyard of a Slav. They were overgrown with weeds, thick with thistle, all the fences broken down. I took a long look and pondered what I saw. The fields preached me a sermon, and I listened. A nap here, a nap there, a day off here, a day off there. Sit back, take it easy. Do you know what comes next? Just this. You can look forward to a dirt poor life with poverty as your permanent house guest. Isn't that cool? Don't hear the word Slav in the Bible very often. And then to round out this piece of our sermon about work, there are two dad jokes about work. I wrote a book on how to survive a fall down the stairs. It has step-by-step instructions. I tried to start a professional hide-and-seek team, but it didn't work out. Turns out good players are hard to find. Lots of chuckles, some groans. That's a really good dad joke, right? Okay, category 2, general life advice. Dads want us to be the best person we can be. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, or as Paul put it, our spiritual gifts. And we all have the potential to be good human beings, and dads want that for us. So they have several pieces of advice that will make us fully mature humans if we just listen and pay attention. First advice from general life. Once you have made a decision, act on it, and don't second guess yourself, and don't look back. Don't second guess. You can spend more time analyzing a decision than the decision justifies. Take all the input you can reasonably find, and then trust your gut. The corollary to this advice is that your first instinct is probably correct. How many have discovered that? When you're making a decision, the first choice that you think about is probably the right one. And once you've made a decision, act on that decision, and don't continually wring your hands over whether you made the right choice. You can always do the worst case scenario analysis. What is the worst thing that could happen if I try this? Now, I did this when I was a kid, and I always made the wrong choice, but as a mature adult, you could use this. What is the worst thing that can happen? Is anybody going to get hurt? Is anyone going to jail? If the answer is no, then go for it. Usually, the worst case scenario will lead to the conclusion that you shouldn't sweat the small stuff. You've heard that one, right? You shouldn't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. It's important to act and not to worry and delay taking action. As the saying goes, you win some, you lose some, and some get rained out, but you suit up for all of them. Right or wrong, the best course is to get in the game and try. Sitting on the sidelines never produce anything but tired butt. Second piece of advice, about general advice. Don't worry about your reputation. Worry about your character. Don't worry about your reputation. Worry about your character. Your reputation is only what other people think of you. Your character is who you really are. If only middle schoolers, and that part of us which never got out of middle school, could take this to heart. We spend so much time trying to impress other people, trying to build our reputation, that we lose sight of what is really important, building our character. Jesus certainly did not care about his reputation. He focused only on his character. Being a kingdom person means having a good character, based on what Jesus would do. If you are right with God, then your character will be right, and your reputation will follow. Don't worry about your reputation. Worry about your character. Next piece of advice. Don't lick frozen poles or mailboxes. Ever heard that one? It seems like a no-brainer, right? Don't lick frozen poles. If you put your tongue on a metal pole or a metal mailbox when it is freezing, the resulting pain to your tongue is predictable. And I could ask for a show of hands, and I'm going to say about 50% of us in here know that firsthand. The problem is, sometimes we are the no-brainers. We've all done things in our lives and then look back and said, that was stupid. But the frost on that cold pole looks so good. Dads want to protect us from the damage we can do ourselves when we are that stupid. How do they do that? Well, some dads will just rip you from the pole, leaving part of your tongue on there to teach you a lesson, right? Others might go get some warm water from the house and gradually thaw your tongue out so that you wouldn't lose part of it, and hope that you learn from being stuck. Other words of wisdom along the same line of don't lick the pole are, don't stand on a moving vehicle. My dad had to tell me that several times. Don't stand on a moving vehicle. Don't play with matches. Don't kick a skunk. You get the idea. There's several of those kind of pieces of advice. And the book of Proverbs is full of wise advice. I recommend you read it all, bearing in mind that nearly 3,000 years ago, their society was somewhat different from today's society. Proverbs was written by men for men, so you don't see much about women in Proverbs. And here's a sampling, just 14 verses from Proverbs 10. Wise son, glad father. Stupid son, sad mother. Ill-gotten gain gets you nowhere. An honest life is immortal. There you go. God won't starve an honest soul, but he frustrates the appetites of the wicked. Sloth makes you poor. Diligence brings wealth. Make hay while the sun shines. That's smart. Go fishing during harvest. That's stupid. Blessings accrue on a good and honest life, but the mouth of the wicked is a dark cave of abuse. A good and honest life is a blessed memorial. A wicked life leaves a rotten stench. That's a pretty powerful image, huh? A wise heart takes orders. An empty head will come unglued. Honesty lives confident and carefree, but shifty is sure to be exposed. An evasive eye is a sign of trouble ahead, but an open face-to-face meeting results in peace. The mouth of a good person is a deep, life-giving well, but the mouth of the wicked is a dark cave of abuse. Hatred starts fights, but love pulls a quilt over the bickering. You'll find wisdom on the lips of personal insight, but the short-sighted need a slap in the face. The wise accumulate knowledge, a true treasure. Know-it-alls talk too much, a sheer waste. I like that one. Know-it-alls talk too much. Some people have accused me of talking too much. I don't know if there's any correlation there or not. And now I have 3 dad jokes based on living the best life. My daughter shrieked at me, "Dad, you haven't heard a word I've said, have you?" What an odd way to start a conversation. With your man. Concerned that his son was spending too much time on video games, a dad said to him, "When Abe Lincoln was your age, he was studying books by the light of the fireplace." "Oh yeah," the son retorted. "Well, when Abe Lincoln was your age, he was president of the United States." Someone complimented my dad's parking today. They left a note on his windshield that said, "Parking fine." The third category of advice is about money. And don't dads always want us to be financially secure? Partly it is self-interest. Once we can pay our own way, we quit asking them for money. It's like an instant raise when your kids get out on their own, isn't it? And part of it is being fully human. In our society, money plays a huge role. You need a certain amount of it just to survive, a little more to be comfortable, and a lot more to get a ride on a rocket ship. So dads have a lot to say about getting, keeping, and spending money. First advice. Money isn't everything, but it sure beats whatever's second. Ever heard that? Money isn't everything, but it sure beats whatever is second place. At first glance, this sounds crass and greedy, but it is certainly true that our society values money. I count 8 banks, credit unions, and finance companies just in Delta. And your cell phone can now act as your bank. Think about that. You're carrying your bank around in your pocket now. Money is certainly not everything, but it is an important part of being fully mature. Second advice, it's always about the money, especially when they say it's not about the money. When someone, especially an institution or government, takes an action and immediately says, it's not about the money, it's about the fill in the blanks, it's usually about the money. One of the great problems with our political system in the United States is it takes a lot of advertising to get elected, and ads cost a lot of money. So whoever is elected is in some ways limited in their decisions by who donated to their campaign or who is likely to donate to their next campaign. Candidates' statements and actions are many times really about the money. Third piece of advice, don't spend it all in one place. You probably heard that. Don't spend it all in one place. This is usually good money management advice. From the casino to Starbucks to Amazon, there are so many places to get rid of your money. And aren't they all asking you to get rid of your money? Yep. We've all done impulse buys or instant gratification purchases and then regretted it later. If you take the time to comparison shop, that's what don't spend it all in one place means. Look at more than one place. You may find that what you thought was a necessity at the time you began really is more of a want than a need, and maybe could wait. Proverbs has a lot to say about money, mostly that it does not lead to happiness. Proverbs 23:4 and 5 say, don't wear yourself out trying to get rich. Restrain yourself. Riches disappear in the blink of an eye. Wealth sprouts wings and flies off into the wild blue yonder. What a vision that is. Huh? Wealth spreads wings, sprouts wings, and flies off. And now a dad joke about money. After years of putting money into a savings account, a wife tells her husband the good news. Honey, we finally got enough money to buy what we started saving for in 1979. Her husband blushes with giddy excitement. You mean a brand new Cadillac, he says. No, she says, a 1979 Cadillac. Category 4, romance. Dads always have really good advice about romance, don't they? How many of you went to your dad for romantic advice? Nobody's hand in it. Nobody's hand in it. Okay. But here's a few things. You should marry your best friend. Hopefully you will spend a lot of time over the years with the person you marry. That time will go quicker and be happier if you're friends. Friendships implies having some, but not all, common interests, a mutual respect, and the ability to overlook some warts. There's a saying that a friend is someone who knows all your faults and likes you anyway. How wonderful if your spouse likes you despite your tendency well, you fill in the blanks. You know your faults better than I do. Second piece of advice, and I've used this advice a lot since I heard it. Do you want to be right, or do you want to have a relationship? Do you want to be right, or do you want to have a relationship? It speaks to one of the basic problems in any relationship, pride. Our egos, our prideful selves want to be right, to be recognized, to be stroked, even at the risk of a good relationship. Think of how many times God, who is always right, gave up his need to be right to encourage a relationship with us. God never says, I told you so. Maybe we could eliminate that phrase from our vocabulary. And this advice is a corollary to the advice we discussed earlier. Don't sweat the small stuff. How many times is an argument between spouses about really, really small stuff, like how to load the dishwasher? If both parties to a marriage, or to any relationship for that matter, just give a little, the relationship could survive. If neither will or can give, the relationship will suffer. Proverbs 18:22 is a short but sweet directive about marriage. Find a good spouse, you find a good life, and even more, the favor of God. Short but sweet. Find a good spouse, you find a good life. How true is that? 2 dad jokes about romance. I asked my date to meet me at the gym, but she never showed up. I guess the two of us aren't going to work out. I told my dad, I have an imaginary girlfriend. Imaginary girlfriend. My dad sighed and said, you know you could do better. Thanks, Dad, I said. That means a lot. Dad shook his head and said, I was talking to your girlfriend. In summary, my best advice, not as your dad, but as your friend, is to try to be a kingdom person. To try to do as Jesus would do. And try not to take yourself, or life itself, too seriously. Amen.
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you. Sin runs deep, your grace is known. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ to me. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you. Teach my songs to rise to you when temptation comes my way. When I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you.
And now as we leave the sanctuary after we have some ice cream, I'm going to pray for guidance, so if you'll join me in benediction. Gracious God, be with us this week as we go out and go about our daily tasks. Be with us every moment, guide us, lead us, give us good advice, that we might become a kingdom person as you would have us be. In the name of the Christ. Amen. Now I see that they're getting the ice cream ready, so hang tight, visit, get a cup of coffee or whatever, and we'll just have some cocoa. Kids are serving, so just stay at your table.